Good evening, and welcome to the second meeting of the Public Safety Committee. Welcome to all those who are joining us online, and welcome to our fellow committee members. We have Marilyn Gardner, Commissioner Marilyn Gardner, and Commissioner Bill Harris. Welcome to everyone, and we're going to go ahead and start our Public Safety Committee meeting. This is our second one. As a call to order, I wanted to start out with an invocation and ask Commissioner Gardner to lead us in our invocation, and then Commissioner Harris to lead us in our pledge. We'll stand and bow our heads.
Please bow for our invocation. Dear Lord, we are grateful for this wonderful town in which we live, and we are thank you so much for the many blessings that we enjoy. And we ask your guidance in these meetings that we are having, that we may make decisions that are that you approve and that will be good for all of our citizens in the area. And we ask that you be with those who are in harm's way this evening with weather, and help us go forward out of these meetings with new commitment for making our community of Fuquay-Varina the best place it can be. In your holy name we pray, amen.
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 Please join me for the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now to review and approve our minutes. All of our committee members should have a copy of our minutes. If you've had a chance to review them, then the next step would be to approve them.
And just as a matter of quickly just kind of going through it, the minutes do touch on the approval of the first meeting's agenda. There was no old business or presentations at that meeting. New business involved the establishment of the committee organization, the establishment of the committee mission, a report by our town attorney, and then general discussion by members of the committee. The meeting adjourned at 8:36 p.m.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I'm in order, I recall that in the minutes, Commissioner Gardner stated that she would like to hear from Commissioner Harris, and I thought that was regarding activities with the Racial Equity Task Force. Was I corrected that?
I did say I would like to, particularly since you had been involved with that task force, would like to hear from you on anything from your task force experience that would be pertinent.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to
that was my intent.
Okay, all right. That was excluded from the statement in the minutes, and I would like.
Can we have that added to the minutes?
We can reference that. I mean, the minutes, while they are some level of detail, they're not verbatim word for word as to every word that's stated at the meeting, but we can certainly reference that as a part of the adoption of these minutes.
I thought that was crucial since that was a request from Commissioner Gardner.
Okay. So
thank you.
You're welcome.
Let the minutes reflect that request from Commissioner Gardner to hear from Commissioner Harris about his work with this committee, with the League of Municipalities. And with that said, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes as corrected.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, then we have passed the minutes. Under old business, I wanted to bring up a review of the committee mission, and wanted to go back to what we approved the committee mission to be. It's in our minutes that the Public Safety Committee's purpose for meeting at this time is to gain further understanding about how community and law enforcement relate and identify opportunities to support community policing principles and strengthen relationships. And the reason I wanted to bring it up was there was, I believe, reference at the board meeting where this committee was tasked to meet, that by our full board, that perhaps it would be regarding not just the law enforcement, but a town as a whole, meaning all departments, about how the community and not law enforcement, but all departments relate and identify opportunities to support community policing principles and strengthening relationships. When we met as a public safety committee and we established our purpose 2 weeks ago, we decided to have it apply to how community and law enforcement relate and identify opportunities to support community policing principles and strengthening relationships. The input I wanted to add on that was that, and I wanted to get your input, of course, as well, is that this is the Public Safety Committee. And so, given that we're the Public Safety Committee, we would be dealing with issues that reflect and surround public safety, which would, in my opinion, relate to police and fire. And so, if it were to relate to the entire town as a whole, then would it be appropriate to be coming from the Public Safety Committee, which is tasked with issues with and limited to the public safety of our communities? So that's something I wanted to bring up. In other words, would this be the correct committee to be looking at? Although I think it's beneficial, I definitely think it's beneficial. I don't want to say that it's absolutely beneficial to apply the things that are gained from this committee to all of our departments, but would this be the right committee to be looking at that? And that's what I wanted to get some input on. My opinion was that because we are the Public Safety Committee, then it would have to be more narrowly focused to departments that deal with public safety. And so that's my input on that, and of course want to hear from our fellow committee members.
I think there is. I think I would like something that close to what you just said, that further understanding about how community and our town relate as pertinent to the Public Safety Committee, what the departments that fall under the Public Safety Committee, something like what you said. I haven't got it phrased very well here. Bill, you're much more eloquent. Can you come up with the right phrasing there?
I'm having difficulty understanding what you're asking. Are you asking that we keep this same mission or expand the mission, or I'm not too clear what.
I just think that we need to keep the mission related to public safety, while I believe that all of our departments obviously could gain from what we recommend and what we whatever we recommend to a department. I think that the Public Safety Committee is tasked with dealing with public safety issues, and so that it should not be a more broad focus, but a more narrow focus related to public safety. So I'm either for keeping what we have, or I have no objection to saying that the community and how the community and public safety and agencies that deal with public safety relate and identify opportunities to support community, but I think we're the Public Safety Committee, so we need to stick to that area.
And that's what the mission statement is here.
Yes.
Yes. It's pretty clear to me what our charge would be then.
Well, this just says law enforcement. The Public Safety Committee deals with more safety issues than just law enforcement. And I think it would behoove us to look at take a broader look at things that fall within the purview of Public Safety Committee, rather than taking one department. That's my feeling on this, because I hope we're going to learn a lot about. I hope we're going to learn a lot about what we're doing now and what we can do better in as many instances as apply to the Public Safety Committee, the issues that fall under the Public Safety Committee.
That may be true. The original motion that was made to place this in the Public Safety Committee was based on the effort to address, I remember the motion, citizen and law enforcement or police engagement. And that was very specific to what the charge of the committee would be. The intent of the original motion was focused on that area. It wasn't focused on fire, any other issue relative to public safety. It was mainly focused on engaging citizens, and I think the original motion was, it was a police citizen engagement committee or effort. And that charge was placed in this committee to address that particular issue, as opposed to a broader spectrum of public safety. So that was one of the reasons for the initial motion to be in this committee, and the mission that we have here reflects the intent of my motion that I made. So, you know, I think perhaps this particular charge, based on the intent of the motion that I made, is pretty accurate as it relates to what we need to be doing here.
My understanding was that the call to our first public safety committee meeting said something to the effect of, I don't have it in front of me. Adam, do you have that? It said something to the effect of the communication or relationships between the town and the community.
Yeah. So there's a lot that's been said with regards to this over the last several weeks. I do think Commissioner Harris is right in his initial motion. I think as that motion was being talked through, there was conversation at the board level about a broader look. And then, of course, obviously, when we got to this committee, being the Public Safety Committee, it was more narrowed down, as it states in the minutes, to just how community and law enforcement relate. I mean, I think while the focus of the committee's work may be more geared towards law enforcement, it is the Public Safety Committee. One consideration could be that if the committee wanted, that the mission statement read that the Public Safety Committee's purpose for meeting at this time is to gain further understanding about how community and public safety relate and identify opportunities to support community public safety principles and strengthen relationships. That doesn't mean you can't continue to focus on, in certain aspects, law enforcement, if that's the direction that your conversation led you, but it would allow for there to be some reasonable relationship to your work and the broader public safety umbrella than just law enforcement.
I don't feel strongly, except that I think we need to clarify it at this point.
I was on the impression it was very clear. We spent a lot of time at our last meeting refining a mission statement, which I felt we were all on the same page with as far as what our particular charge should be. And, you know, I don't know where this is coming from in regards to trying to expand or change at this particular point. You know, I think that as far as our discussion, the original intent of the motion to be placed in the Public Safety Committee, which to me is timely. I don't understand why we would even want to make it even broader with what the original intent of the motion is, and I don't see that as anything that would inhibit conversations within the committee about law enforcement, policing, strengthening the community, because that seems to be the, the original intent of my motion.
And I was the one that raised the question, Bill. I just, I'm sorry, Commissioner. I just, when the, I had understood with board discussion that evening that it was going to be broader. And then when the call to the first public safety meeting that we had 2 weeks ago went out, it suggested, what was stated in that call to the meeting was broader. So I just wanted it clarified. I don't have a problem with it being just as it was.
And I think you are
Distributed.
correct. The public notice was more broad. And I think that's what you're referring to.
And that, I guess that had me thinking when the public notice went out that's what our mission was going to be broader like that too. I just think it needed clarifying. I don't have a problem with the way it came out in the minutes if that is the wish of this committee.
Yeah, and I think everybody's right here. I think Commissioner Harris's original motion was more narrow. I think the way it went out to the community was more broad. Mm-hmm. And then when we came here, it became, what it is right now. And so I think I can see where there was that confusion because it went narrow, broad, and then narrow. And so I totally get that would have been confusing. And so that's why I thought it was good to bring up and clarify, because of that confusion as to how it was presented and then how we narrowed it in the meeting. So I appreciate all comments on that. And it sounds like we would just keep it the way that
As it is
when, but we've clarified, that in this meeting because it is in contradiction to what was raised and announced when we did the town notice. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think you're both right. And that was good for clarification. So.
And I think it will be good for us as we proceed in these meetings at each meeting to refer in the early part of the meeting to our mission.
What our mission is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, I do too.
As we defined it, yes.
Especially with people, if they're just tuning in, and they have not seen previous meetings.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you to both of you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mm-hmm.
So now we get to our presentation. I'm excited tonight to have our North Carolina League of Municipalities with us tonight, and very excited to hear a presentation from them. One of the things that I was really excited about in this committee was to hear from the league and get the wisdom from the league. And we have Brian Leard and Tom Anderson here tonight, who are going to talk to us about how the league can help us, what services the league provides, and how it may be of benefit to the town of Fuquay-Varina. And I was really excited to have both of these people here, and as quickly as they were able to come here was very wonderful. It was a lot quicker than I thought we would be able to get them here. So we're going to have that. This is our presentation tonight, and then if we have any questions, then we can ask after they're done presenting. But anyway, thank you so much to both of you for being here tonight, and I will leave it to our presenters.
Well, thank you so much for having us. We're honored to be here with you tonight. And just as a matter of a quick introduction, my name is Brian Leard. I'm the Associate Executive Director of the League of Municipalities. And my area of responsibility is oversight of the 3 insurance pools that the League provides to our members. I've been in government operations now going almost 30 years, including a long stint with the City of Charlotte as the risk control manager for both the City of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. And joining me tonight is Tom Anderson. Tom is the Director of Risk Control here at the League, but Tom also has a very extensive background in government operations and especially in law enforcement, having served as the Chief of Police for the City of Statesville, and he's also an adjunct criminal justice professor. So with with that, I'll lead us into our presentation. And what we want to talk to you about tonight are some things that the League has been developing over a number of years, related especially to law enforcement. We're constantly looking at how we can better serve the cities and towns. As you know, the League of Municipalities, we only serve municipal and governmental operations within North Carolina. As our motto says, we're working as one, advancing all. So we try to take what we find, what we see as a common denominator for our members and ways to be able to help them. And a number of years ago, one of the areas that we saw in the risk management operation, and again, looking at workers' comp and property casualty lines of insurance that we provide for cities and towns, is we really started taking a hard look at law enforcement operations. We dug in and provided a deep analysis and looking at the activity that we're seeing come through our risk management pool, and realizing that for any city, for Fuquay-Varina, for any municipal operation, the police operations is going to be one of the most visible and frequent types of interactions that your citizens are going to have with government. And within our risk management program, there's nearly 300 police departments that participate in these programs. So we've got a lot of opportunity to look at what is happening across the state. So as we started digging into this, we realized that one of the areas of concern that we had is that there was no real consistency of police policies and police training that we were seeing across North Carolina. And keep in mind, we work with very small police departments and we work with large police departments too. So we see the gamut of operations across the state. And we started asking ourselves, what can the League of Municipalities do? What can the insurance programs do to help our cities and towns to develop programs to enhance the law enforcement operations, reduce officer injuries, and better serve the community that your police department works with. So that led us to look at a number of resources and initiatives specifically for police departments. And I will say, we've been able to take the success of this program and roll it out into other areas as well. But one of the things that came out of this review and the analysis is, early on we formed what we referred to as our Police Chiefs Advisory Committee. Now, this is a group of police chiefs from across the state representing smaller and larger size operations that we meet with on a regular basis to talk about what we're seeing happen within our own programs, within the risk management programs at the League, to look at what's happening across the state of North Carolina, and to look at what's happening nationally, both in other cities and what's happening in court and in jurisdictions, and evaluating what can we do, what type of techniques, what type of programs can we put in place to enhance the services, to enhance the programs at the police department, and ultimately to help them better engage with their citizens. I mean, when you really look at police operations, it's a three-legged stool. And you look at policy, you look at training, and you look at supervision. And all of those areas are critically important to the ultimate outcome of the success of any police program. And if there's a lacking in any one of those, then everything gets off balance at that point. So we started looking at coming out of this Police Chiefs Advisory Committee, what could we offer to our cities and towns? So in 2015, we started to establish what those law enforcement priorities were. And we identified exposures related to several risk areas. And Tom is going to get into what the law enforcement risk review is. But one thing that's really important to keep in mind on this is what we have developed is specifically geared toward those areas that we see as critical for any police operation. There's not any, for lack of better words, any fluff that's built into this. This is it's an all-in, it's an all or nothing type of approach. And to successfully get through this risk review that we're going to talk about, it's not a 90% completion and you're good, a 95% completion. It's 100% completion of the categories that Tom is going to discuss here in just a moment, because everything that we've identified as part of the risk review process and that has had the input from our Police Chiefs Advisory Committee, and that has also been endorsed by the North Carolina Police Chiefs Association, and also with a strong working relationship we have with Wake Tech Community College and the state's largest law enforcement training program there. It's really developed into a program that's taken on a life of its own. We looked at other states and looked to see what were they doing to enhance the operations to better serve the police departments and ultimately serve the citizens from other state leagues. And what we found is that there wasn't a lot in place in a lot of these other state leagues as well. And in fact, a number of states have taken this program and implemented it back for their state, including Florida, Texas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, South Carolina, all just to name a few that have taken what you're about to hear and have modeled their program after what North Carolina is doing. We've also been working with North Carolina Training and Standards and looking at accreditation processes, and they have also shown support for what we're doing and looking to incorporate this program into things that they're trying to do as well. So this ultimately led to the law enforcement risk management review that involved the claim staff at the league, keeping in mind the nearly 300 police departments that we have that participate in this program and the activity that we see coming through our claim staff, our underwriting, our counsel, and then again, the Police Chiefs Association and other state leagues as well. So all of that has led into the development of this program and a program that we believe has had a lot of impact on the police departments that have participated in this, has shown a more professional, an opportunity for the police departments to take their level of professionalism to the next level, and to how that carries over into the community and the trust and the interaction that the community has with the police department. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tom Anderson and let him guide us through what some of the components of this risk review are.
All right, thank you, Brian. And I came on with the league in 2015 as the public safety risk management consultant. My first priority was in working with the Chiefs Advisory Committee to develop the process and the instrument that I'm getting ready to share with you. And just in dialing down into some of the common areas that we see resulting in the most risk across the board is what you see on the screen. And Brian already hit on this. The top three are policy, training, and supervision. And where we see those top three lacking, there's not a solid foundation for that police department to be built on. If the policies are outdated, if they're not revised, if they're not refreshed, if they are not current, reflective of best practices, It's not if, it's when, that next bad event's going to happen. There are some policies that we have looked at across the state that hadn't been reviewed or revised in 20, 30 years, which is quite frankly unacceptable. And when we see those situations, we work very hard to correct what those deficiencies are and try to bring that agency up to what the current best practices standard are. And you can have the greatest policies in the world, but if you're not training your officers and your employees as to what those policies entail, then we can't expect them to interpret the policy. We've got to teach them the policy. Training is essential. It's got to be documented. It's got to be chronicled. And then the strongest component, supervision. Clearly, where we have seen failures and bad events, it's where leadership is lacking. It's where supervisors were simply not behaving as supervisors. So when we go through the categories, go through the risk review, a lot of the spirit of these areas you're going to see really embodied in all of the categories in some way, shape, or form. Also, performance management. What does that mean? We want to set benchmarks, we want to set standards high, and we want to be able to have officers held accountable. We want to be able to properly discipline, providing due process, and we also want to recognize them when things are going great. It's all part of performance management. And also, again, very important, you've got to be able to review and revise on a regular basis, and that's all part of what the thinking was into going into this process. So when we rolled out the risk review as an initiative, it was in the fall of 2016. We were very fortunate to have a chief on the advisory committee who was a veteran chief of in excess of 35 years from a variety of agencies. She volunteered to have her agency be our pilot program, the Davison Police Department. And that's where we learned a lot of the dynamics of how this process would unfold across the state. But early on, these were the goals that were identified. These are still the goals today. As a process and as a program, we want to identify and mitigate liability exposures for North Carolina police agencies. And we've got the fortune and I guess misfortune of having a lot of history, good and bad, to learn from and to repeat the best practices and reverse engineer where things went wrong and to further reduce liability for the rest of our agencies. Second point, we want to enhance officer and community safety. Both are vitally important, and the categories reflect that. And we want to be able to assist agencies in training and improving their procedures and processes and making sure they meet industry standards. And currently, the risk review has over 39 high-risk categories for review. I'm getting ready to show you what those categories are. And anytime there's an area of need or where improvements are needed, even if the agency needs policies or sample language, we provide whatever the necessary point is so that they can meet that category. Brian said it's 100% or nothing, but the thing is, we provide resources to help agencies meet whatever that criteria is. The public expects the same thing out of law enforcement across the state. The courts are the same as far as the Fourth Amendment is concerned. The standards are the same, the expectations are the same, and the categories are the same, whether it's a 7-officer department or a 170-officer department. So again, all of the categories have to be met, and I'm getting ready to show you those now. So this is the breakdown of the review, kind of in a nutshell. It's broken down into an administrative section and an operations section as far as how the program is facilitated. On the administrative side, it's about processes. It's about the mechanics of the operation, the training requirements, the documentation. We focus very heavily, are the supervisors being properly selected, trained, and equipped to deal with that day-to-day operation? Are they recognized and empowered to lead? Are they the embodiment of that department's policy and mission? That category really helps define that. A lot of these categories are very policy specific. Does the agency have an up-to-date and current policy on sexual harassment and sexual discrimination, for example? Bias-based policing policies, are they intact? Is the agency going beyond the state's minimal training and standards requirements and doing things that are proactive, such as defensive driving training, use of force training, de-escalation training, communication type training, and is all that properly documented? We go as far as looking at the property and evidence room management, social media concerns within the agency and law enforcement, and even a continuity of operations plan. What happens if the agency itself, the building, the structure, communications is compromised? What is plan B? What is plan C? If that doesn't exist, we help to develop that. On the operations side, that deals very surgically with how we relate with our public. How are we interacting with our citizenry? When it's a use of force situation, are those policies up to date? Are those processes being trained properly? Are the less lethal weapons that are being used adhering to best practices and the most recent court updates, the most recent court rulings? For example, when we're looking at the category for less lethal weapons, the language of the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals in the Village of Pinehurst v. Armstrong case is actually quoted within that category. Agencies have to follow what the courts say as it relates to some of these categories. And several of these categories incorporate directly those case laws related to whatever that specific discipline is. So you'll see care and custody of suspects, dealing with persons of diminished capacity, excited delirium. And in each of these categories, you've got very specific dimensions that have to be met 100% to fulfill that category. So just some other ones, you'll see canine operations, SWAT, SRT, special operations, tactical team management. Part of my experience, I was our department SWAT commander for a number of years. So when I'm talking to a SWAT commander at your agency, I've actually got that same background. I kind of know it when I see it, for example. So I can use my experience as an officer and also experience gleaned from a number of agencies across the state to help in determining, is this an acceptable practice, also in conjunction with our Chiefs Advisory Committee. So Brian, if you'll flip it to the next slide, I'm going to give you an example of what a category looks like. So number 6 on the operations section is transportation, handcuffing, restraining of suspects. I just want to give an example of how specific some of this language gets. So this is subcategory B related just to handcuffing. Handcuffing is a very high frequency activity that law enforcement officers engage in. It's also an area where there can be a lot of liability if it's not done properly. So when we're looking at an agency's policy and practice, very simply, we look to see that the policy directs that double locks are utilized. And by double locks, when you look at a set of handcuffs, there's a mechanism. When that mechanism is engaged, they can't cinch tighter when you sit on them in a seat, for example. So double locks have to be utilized, tightness checked anytime handcuffing takes place. And very importantly, part of the requirement is that officers simply document that. Just a simple sentence saying that they did those processes, either in writing or by use of body camera and verbally saying that, so it's memorialized. And very importantly, like I've already said, that the department conducts training on this, and it's required on an annual basis on issues surrounding handcuffing, the policies, the acceptable practices, and that can simply be added on to the annual in-service firearms and use of force requirements and policy review. So, we're talking another 5 to 10 minutes annually to hit this very high liability area policy. Another example of a category, bias-based policing, number 6 in the admin section. We look to see that the agency has an up-to-date, sound policy based on what the best practices are, that enforcement is not utilized regarding just race, ethnicity, gender, religion, national origin as a reason to restrict someone's liberty. And that the policy is trained annually, that it's reviewed, it's updated as needed. And if there's a training need, for example, in this category, we provide a significant resource to our municipalities with an online university with a variety of classes related to just this one category to help that agency, number one, do this correctly based on industry best practices, but also have proper training that they can provide for their officers. So how does this process unfold? It starts with a meeting with the chief and the manager, and I have already met with your chief and manager. After that, basically the next step is the program itself, all of the resources, all of the things necessary to start the process are given to the agency. And they do an internal policy validation where they take the categories, all of the dimensions, everything's provided, and they basically do an evaluation and assessment internally and make any necessary changes that are needed to comply with whatever the categories are. If they need some assistance with the policy or training or whatever the best practice is, we provide that along the way. And after the agency feels that they are complete and they have met all the standards, they submit it to us. We do an off-site peer review of the policies as they relate to the standards. And it's very common to have additional conversation, additional updates or improvements or additional language added. And once all of that is over, we schedule an agency review where we come on site. We'll spend a day to 2 days actually looking at operations. If you say you're doing in a policy, we see it in action. We validate that, we verify that, and we document it. We go as far as looking at training files. We look to see that some of those high areas of training are really being conducted properly and effectively. We look at equipment, processes, even agency security. Again, the evidence room management, we look at the evidence room. We look at those critical areas such as, narcotic storage, cash storage, firearms storage, and making sure that those are adhering to best practices. We do a number of interviews with key stakeholders within the agency, the high liability officers, your canine leaders, tactical leaders. We even do ride-alongs with officers where we will talk to them about their understanding of policy, such as response to resistance policies, defensive driving and pursuit policies, or anything that's important to that agency. We can actually have conversation with those officers to benchmark where they are at. And the next part of it is, once all that is over, we do a formal recognition of the agency, of the leadership before council, and recognize them for the positive steps that they have taken in meeting, best practice standards as recognized by their peer chiefs from across the state, and what those best practices are as defined across the country in a lot of ways. So, and I can tell you that agencies that come into this process, I can tell you is number one, evidence of a healthy agency, strong leadership as far as wanting to mitigate problems, try to make their agency better. And it's very refreshing, the number of agencies across our state that have volunteered to go through this process and made themselves transparent. So that is a healthy sign when a city and an agency is wanting to go into a process like this. After that council presentation, we don't just stop working with your agency. That relationship persists from there on out in a very different way. We continually communicate with the agency. We provide updates, improvements, any new categories, any training that might be needed to help enhance an operation. We provide that. And then every 3 years, we do a reevaluation and add additional benchmarks as necessary. So as Brian said, this is a process that was very supported by the North Carolina Association of Chiefs of Police very early in the process. As of today's date, we have over 33 departments that have successfully completed the risk review process, with 5 more nearing completion, expected to complete their parts of the process by April. And right now we have about 120 agencies across the state at some point in the review process. So there's a lot of work that's going into it. A lot of agencies doing a lot of hard work and good work to verify that they are doing the right things and to fix problems as we identify them. Some of the resources that we provide for agencies, there's a lot of training related to a lot of the categories that I've shown you. We don't just say you've got to meet this standard and then not help the agency along the way. We actually have a variety of experts in a lot of very specific disciplines as it relates to some of the categories, such as use of force in response to resistance. So this is one of our premier classes that we have been putting on across the state for the last 5 to 6 years in partnership with a variety of community colleges. And we're also now doing this in a webinar format. So it's all about de-escalation, decision-making for law enforcement, proper communication, branch chain communication and decision-making, and in those proper best practice processes. Our next webinar is actually scheduled for March 30th, and your department will be given an invite for that. Another class we do and just did, one of our newer offerings, strategies for policing mass gatherings and protests. We just did a webinar on this and had a very good attorney that practices in this very specific discipline to provide this type of training for our agency so that, number one, officers are safe, the community's safe, that we are very responsive to protecting constitutional rights while also balancing the needs of public safety. Another class that we're doing, and one of our most highly requested, is Dangerous Crossroads Ahead, the intersection of the First and Fourth Amendment. The interaction between the public, video cameras, cell phones, and police activity, what is appropriate, what is not, where those lines are from a constitutional standpoint that the officers have to safeguard in the furtherance of protecting the First Amendment, and where those lines are crossed and where action is necessary or not necessary. That's another class that we've been doing for the last 5 years, face-to-face and also in a webinar format now. So here's just some screenshots of some presentations we've done with city councils where we've had some successful agencies. And this is going to continue to become part of the league's legacy in trying to partner with our law enforcement organizations and our city leadership in making North Carolina law enforcement the best in the country.
And as Tom said, this all grew out of our evaluation of what we were seeing happening within North Carolina, happening within our police departments, and evaluating what the League of Municipalities could do for the members of our insurance programs to help them become better policing agencies and to better serve the communities that they're in. And perhaps one of the some good news I hope about this as well. Not only is it a very successful program, is it a highly sought after program, but everything about the law enforcement risk review and every training that we offer is for those members, for those cities and towns that are participating in the insurance programs, which Fuquay-Varina is. All of this is 100% free. There is no charge for any municipality to go through the risk review or to participate in any of the in-person trainings or the web trainings that we provide. And with that, I'll say thank you for allowing us the opportunity to review this with you tonight, and I'll turn it over if there are any questions.
I had and want to let our other board members, committee members ask, but I had a question. Just how long does the process of this review process typically take from beginning to end for the departments, for our police departments?
That can vary. It depends on where the agency is in the updating of their own policies. We've had some departments that go through this in a few months, and we've had some that have been going through it over a year. And again, to that point, for those departments where their policies have not been where they should be, we provide the resources to help get them to where it needs to be. This is not in any way, shape, or form a punitive measure or punitive approach. We want the departments to be successful. And in fact, one of the things we didn't mention is that there's actually a discount that's applied toward the police professional line of coverage, the insurance coverage, for those departments that successfully complete this, because we have seen that if you address these categories that we've identified, it certainly decreases the risk that the agency has. So that's a long answer to a short question, but it depends on where that agency is at the time. And again, it's 100% completion. So you have to successfully complete every category of this before the risk review is successful.
Thank you.
And I would just add to that, like I said, there's not a category that cannot be met by an agency. And like Brian said, we provide the resources if needed to do that. The shortest amount of time that I've seen an internal policy review done has been 2 weeks. So we work at the pace of the agency. We don't set timelines. The agency sets the timelines. It's the agency's program. We're just here to help facilitate it.
Thank you. Are there other questions from our committee members?
Would you speak to the accreditation process? Is that something that a law enforcement agency is accredited by another association, a national association, or is it done primarily through an accreditation process from the league?
So, go ahead, Tom.
There is a national accreditation, and that is, you're referring to CALEA, the Commission for Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. That is a national accreditation program. And by no means does the risk review intend to replace accreditation. We're very supportive of accreditation. But we actually go more specific within policy and language in what some of the best practices are as it relates to risk management. So, you know, the two marry very well. There's also a state accreditation that is in development. I happen to be on the committee with training and standards and development of that. And it's the same thing, very similar to CALEA on the state side. But again, it's looking at a professionalism type model, not necessarily as surgically as we go on the risk management side. Together, they're both great programs. But as a standalone program, when we're looking at risk management, reducing risk to the officers, reducing claims, reducing lawsuits, reducing exposure from a variety of fronts, the after effect of that is that we have seen as professionalism goes up, okay, and that is very directly linked to trust in the community and the ability to develop those long-lasting relationships. And the benefit of that is, as you all know, when the community and police work together, we are problem solving without question. And it all is rooted back to these very basic essentials that we are identifying in the risk review and helping to make better.
One of the areas that we take it a little bit further too than some accreditation processes is that we're making sure that the language within the policy actually matches what the police department is doing, and it's not just a for lack of better terms, a cookie cutter policy. We have reviewed policies before that from a very small police department that was talking about their aviation unit within their policy. And so we make sure that truly what is in the policy is reflective of that agency's capabilities and that agency and what that agency is doing.
Okay, all right, good.
Any other questions for our presenters?
Just one other question. Your final report or recommendation is submitted to the council, and I guess that will come in some sort of written format or something of that nature to be possibly made available to the public?
We provide a document that basically breaks down the complete risk review instrument, where we go in and add comments to how the agency has met those standards and requirements. And once all of that is completed, there's a sign-off part of that document between a league representative and the chief of police. That document is then hand-delivered to the chief. And what happens after that is really up to the city. If you want to make it public, that is fine. If you want to keep it internal, that is fine as well. I mean, that relationship exists between us and the police chief, or us and the city manager.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Any other questions for our presenters? Well, thank you very much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to come and speak with us tonight about what you have to offer, and I very much appreciate that presentation and the extensive amount of things that are offered through the league for our town. And so thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Yes.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
So let's we can talk about some of the things we've just heard in just a minute. I wanted to, under our discussion, I wanted to move to new business and just talk about our next meeting and what I would suggest for our next meeting. During our next meeting, what I would suggest to our committee that we do is use the next meeting as a time for the public to present to us, and the public to be able to speak to us and to be able to get public feedback from any member of the public that wishes to speak to us, and that, other than approving our minutes, and again, refocusing each meeting on our mission, that we use that meeting to be able to give the public that very much appreciated and valuable chance to hear from them, and very valuable to us. And so that's what I would suggest we do at our next meeting. Is we've heard from a presenter, very wonderful presentation from two presenters. Would also like to hear from the public, and to make it known that at this meeting, this will be an opportunity for the public to speak to us on this topic, and anything else they want to share, maybe perhaps something they heard from our presentation that they would like to share with us. And so that would be my recommendation for the entirety of our next meeting, to not schedule a presenter and just hear at this juncture from, which would be 2 weeks from tonight, from the public. And wanted to just get some feedback from our committee on that.
I'm okay with that. I think that's appropriate.
I'm much in favor of that. I think one of our main purposes from the beginning here, are the things that we certainly wanted to do, is to be able to listen to our citizens. Will we have guidelines for them, such as the way we do our public comment at the beginning of our board meetings? Will it be something similar?
Yeah, I think that we would have, obviously, a time frame that the public would be able to talk. I know at our board meetings, it's 3 minutes that the public can present to us. And my recommendation would be that it just be an opportunity for us to listen and hear, and that would be an opportunity for those who would like to participate. It's going to be online, so they would have to be able to participate online, because we're not doing in-person meetings yet. But that's what I would suggest. I think we should have a time limit. I don't know how many people would present, but that we are here until the last person presents, and that we don't have any speakers or anything else that would be presented at that meeting. And that would be my suggestion, because as both of you have said at our last meeting, and as Commissioner Gardner just said, an important component of this is listening. And this will give us that opportunity. So, as well as, like we did tonight, listening to our presenter. And so, if
Will they go to will they begin by starting at the town website? Is that how they will access the meeting? Or
Yeah, so we will create a Zoom platform, just like we do for town board meetings. So anyone from the public that wants to address the Public Safety Committee will be able to log on and do that. They'll raise their hand as the Zoom application permits and allows. The IT host will be able to unmute them and allow them the opportunity to address the committee.
I look forward to that. It's that process has served us well.
yes,
Since last, March 20th?
Yes, yes. I think that's a great thing.
so that would be my recommendation. To not have a speaker, to not have anything else on the agenda, but just to listen, and to do that 2 weeks from tonight, and to start at 7 o'clock at that specific and I guess for the rest of the meetings, tonight was just an exception of 7:30, but for the rest of the meetings that we should have to start at 7 o'clock. So that would be my plan for the next meeting. And would move now toward discussion, I wanted to just start off by sharing that I felt like tonight was very exciting to have the information that was presented. Although I will say that Commissioner Harris, you did mention this opportunity at some point before in the past about the league, and I appreciate Commissioner Harris's extensive relationship that he has had with the league, and your regularly reporting to us about what the league does. That's really how I became more acquainted with the league, was through your presentations, and also through the presentations that the league does when we'd have or go to the town hall day. But I really felt like they could, listening to you at the board meetings present what they do, that they could have something to offer us. I did not realize that it was as extensive as was presented tonight, meaning that they had this program that would be able to look at our department and be able to offer suggestions and help. And I did not realize about the certification process and just how extensive it is. And from tonight's presentation, I gained a better understanding of what that process is. I was impressed by how many communities have gone through this program and successfully completed it. I like that they don't go for 90% or 95%, but that it's a full completion of a program. It seems very, very extensive in what it covers. I keep using that word, I'm sure, but just extensive in what it covers and all the different categories. And I only see that a department can only get better, whether the department is doing fantastic. It can only get better from going through that, and that any department in the state could possibly benefit from what they have to offer. And it is something that I think our department I would believe would welcome and be excited to work with, to gain whatever could be gained from this service that is being offered by the league. So I felt like the presentation was very in-depth about what they could offer, and I was looking to the league for anything that the league could possibly offer in community relations to continue there's always room to improve in that area, but I just did not realize it was this much. So I come away from this presentation very, excited about what there is, and the fact that so many communities have engaged with that. And I was curious as to how much time it would take to go through the program, and it just sounds like it depends where the department is at. And then they also added that another question that comes to mind, because we're a municipality that has a budget, was what would this cost us to have all this extensive amount of help that they offer? What would this cost us? I was waiting, and what's this going to cost us? What's the price? Now you've made this great presentation. What does it cost? And I was, again, use the word excited to learn that it was free.
The price is right.
Yeah, the price is, you can have all this help from us and it's free. The other thing is it's a third party they're like they said, they're looking to make every community better, and to look from the outside into whatever a community or a department is doing and to make them better. And I like that it's not a punitive type of evaluation, but it's a evaluation that leads to, or can lead to, positive change. And so I just loved everything I heard. And I know that I always love that what I hear about when Commissioner Harris shares about how the league helps communities. And in this particular area, in closing, it just sounded really helpful and positive to me. And it was free, which is always significant when you're dealing with a municipality and a budget, and something that may be able to be used quicker rather than when we have to have looked at ways of funding things. And so those were my thoughts on it, and would then want to hear the thoughts of both of you on the presentation that we heard tonight.
Would you like to speak, Bill?
Well, you can speak first, yes.
I think it's an amazing opportunity in terms of training and assessment and guidance to, as we review how we're doing things and finding better ways to do things. I think it's exciting to know that there's an opportunity out there, particularly one that is affordable. It was good to hear. It was good to hear about it.
Well, I was elated to hear the different categories, the high-risk categories that they seem to have identified respective to any police department, as well as how they are going to look at policy, training, supervision, performance management, as well as, these are the four, I guess, we would call foundational tools for any successful public agency. And I think that based on their experience with police operations, they have honed in on and can hone in on those areas that are very critical. I mean, these 39 categories, when they identified some of them, they're so crucial to good police work that I think it's good to have an assessment of where we are with our police department, and that this will make the department stronger and better just by having an opportunity to be assessed, evaluated, and provide feedback, as well as, from what I understand, there is some guidance as to how operations could be improved or refined, or if there are some concerns, how they could be addressed better. And I think that would be beneficial to us. I think it's a very important program that the league has. When I heard about it, I was saying, wow, I didn't even know this existed. Mm-hmm. And then the fact that you have the expertise of police chiefs who have a wealth of law enforcement experience in management and running departments, I think that anybody in law enforcement can benefit from that wisdom and expertise. And at the same time, officers, the frontline officer can have an opportunity. From what I understand, they will talk to the officer, they'll look at training files, they will do all of these things that are so crucial to having a even more stronger police department. So, I really liked what was presented as well.
And also, with the number of departments that that are already part of this program, with the addition of every department that goes through this, is more information on how everybody can get better, just from the network. Yeah, I think that speaks well for it too, to have that many communities already participating. And I think I'm sure each one is different. Each one has, as much as they are alike, they are all unique too, I'm sure. And that just strengthens the program, I think. So I'm excited about the opportunity.
And I think one of the things that all of our departments in our town have always prided themselves on is the continued training. Mm-hmm. At board meetings, the board members are often presented different trainings that different department members will go through, and we hear that a lot. And I think our town really values training, and I heard, like you were saying, a very strong training component, and you can, it never hurts to get more training. You can only get better, as you say. I just didn't know this existed. This particular program existed, and so I just was very impressed by what is available to be offered. And Mr. Manager, did you have any comments about what you heard tonight and how you feel about it?
No, I mean, I think that always when there's an opportunity to evaluate policy, procedure, training opportunities, those are positive things. And, you know, I've had these conversations on numerous occasions with Chief Fonstock. She supports this. Town board supports this. You know, I think I mentioned as a reminder that the town board funded a position in our police department in this fiscal year, an administrative position, to focus on policy and procedure and make sure that we are operating as a modern department and doing so with best practice in mind. And of course, we delayed the filling of that position due to COVID-19 and waiting to see how resources and revenues were going to be affected by it. We have since filled the position, and I think that you know, should this be a path that the town wants to go forward with, we have the internal resources to help support that. I know Chief Fonstock, you know, is focused on that and has made that a goal of hers to, you know, make sure that we are where we need to be in that regard. In many ways we are, but there's always room for improvement.
And I think if this ends up being a recommendation that does come out of our committee, this is something that all of our board members, this presentation, which is online, is something that all of our board members would have an opportunity to see, because it really was, I thought, very informative. So thank you again to the league for coming out tonight and making that presentation to us for what they have to offer. So I really do appreciate that. And that is what I had tonight. I wanted to see if there was anything else that any other committee member wanted to bring up before we adjourned for the evening. If not, then I would look for a motion to adjourn. And our next meeting, the date is?
I believe April 1st. Let me just confirm that real quick. Yes, April 1st, 7 p.m.
April 1st, 7 p.m. And I always like to say to the public, since they're not right in front of us, but they're online, thank you for attending this meeting. We will meet again April 1st at 7 p.m. again, which will just be a public feedback type of meeting where we will be able to get feedback and listen to the public at 7 p.m. And so do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move we adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All those in favor notify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Manager.
Thank you.